All right, so good morning, Wally. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Wally Minko accepted our invitation to our show. He's a Grammy-nominated composer, arranger, keyboard player. Wally Minko, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Claudio. Nice to see you.
Same here, man. So, man, with everything that is going on in the world, man, the virus, the pandemic, not everybody having access to the vaccine now. How is this affected your life? You have a little kid, your family, your creativity. How are you dealing with all this stuff, man?
Well, I've been really lucky. My wife works for a company which was deemed essential, so she never quit working. I'm fortunate in that I compose and arrange and record, and I can do all those things at home. So though there has been no live gigs, my income hasn't really suffered. It's just, I miss playing live with the guys, but other than that, everything's been fine.
But you guys, as a musician, make more money when you're on the road, right? But when you're on the road, you don't have the studio home, right? So it kind of balances it out.
Yeah, it's both of them are good.
Yeah.
The road to me is more about having a good time than it is about making money.
Yeah.
Just like your radio station project,
Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't make any money, but I like doing this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Talking to different musicians. And by the way, I interview from the 2018, Jean-Luc Ponty Atlantic year. I interviewed Rayford, Jamie, and Keith. So you were the last piece missing here, man.
Oh, great.
Do you know what I would like to do if you guys have time in a couple of weeks or whatever, one weekend, put the photo of you together, man. I think you talk to Keith more than Jamie, right? That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, both of them about the same. And Jean-Luc about the same, actually. I talked to Rayford the most. Rayford and I have been really, really close since we met.
Bet you, yeah.
Yeah, so I talked to him more than any of the other guys, but I talked to all of them, though.
And the three of you, except Jamie, they're in California, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be good to, have like a Zoom meeting like this and then put the three of you, the four of you together and invite Jean-Luc Ponty, without telling anybody. Huh? That would be fun, right?
Yeah, it'd be great. Let's do it.
Yeah, I would. Don't worry. I will organize it, man. I like talking to you guys, man. Man, I was looking at the list of people that you have played, man. Tony Braxton, Pink, and Vogue. Of course, Jean-Luc, Anderson, Ponty Band, Arturo Sandoval, Barry Manilow. Man, you have an insatiable appetite for good music, man.
I do.
You like good stuff, man, and people love you too, man. You like the stuff, man. So let's go to the beginning. Were you born like in a music family, or when you began playing, piano at the beginning of keyboard?
I wasn't born into a technically musical family, but my dad was a hobbyist. He played guitar and violin, a little bit of piano. My mom was she wasn't a musician, but she was a very artistic person, is a very artistic person. And so I guess I had some of it in my genes. They suspected that I had some aptitude for music when I was very young and started giving me piano lessons, which at the time I truly wasn't very interested in it because I was a little boy and I wanted to go out and play football, But they made me keep at it. And after a couple of years, I started seeing some progress. And at that point, it became fun, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, I began to focus on it a lot more. And that's when I really started to see some rapid development.
And then you began taking formal classes with teachers and stuff like that.
Correct.
It was at the time was piano, no keyboards, right? Most of the people start with piano, right, instead of keyboard.
Yeah. I don't even think synthesizers were out yet at that time,
Yeah.
They came out in like late 60s, I guess. And that's just about the time I was starting piano. I was a little kid. I was born in 1962, so.
Yeah. Got you. Mm-hmm. And then do you remember the first band that you participated? It was like a high school kind of.
Yeah, I don't know if it was high school or probably junior high school. I had a buddy that played clarinet and a buddy that played trombone and one that played trumpet. So we would get together in each other's basements and we found some little books that were arranged for 3 or 4 horns, whatever it was. And we'd sit there and jam, and it probably sounded like crap, but our parents let us do it. So it was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah. And then when there was the first kind of gigs that you guys get paid, was that continue in high school, or what the first band, if you will, you know, not professional band, but professional group that you guys put together, either with the same guys or not?
I didn't do bands until a lot later. The first time I ever got paid to play was I think I was 14 years old, and somebody hired me to play piano at a club, and so I just went there and I played, and I think I made $50 or something, which, you know, when you're 14, that's like $1 million, right?
$1 million, yeah.
Yeah, so that really kind of got my interest too. You know, when I realized, oh, you can make money doing this.
Yeah.
I thought that was great, right? So during high school and for the first couple of years after high school, I did a lot of solo piano work in, you know, hotel lobbies and fancy restaurants, that kind of thing. And that was great because I had a lot of hours behind the keyboard to not only work on my chops, but to learn a million tunes and, you know, develop a lot of different aspects of music, right?
Yep.
And at the same time, then I started meeting a lot of other players, and we would get together and jam. And then so I was starting to sort of figure out the whole band thing too. And gigs just kind of developed from there. You know, one thing led to another. I think it's that way for a lot of musicians, actually.
Yeah. Early age, man, to get paid at 14. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I think who the other guy told me, I think it would have been David Sanchez. David Sanchez also, he got his first gigs when about that age, 14, 15, he got paid.
I'll tell you what, it's a great thing to be able to play the piano, you know, because you can sit down at a piano and play, make some music by yourself. You know, if you're a drummer or a trombone player or something, it's not that easy, right?
And then, so by the time you sort of were 18, you finished high school and you needed to make a decision, college, you know, musician, professional life. You got encouragement for your family? What was a difficult decision for you to make?
It was not a difficult decision because by that time I'd already been gigging for 2 or 3 years, you know, pretty steadily. And I did start college. I went into college and I was doing a classical piano major and a jazz piano major. And I was also gigging at the same time. But I found that right out of high school, I wasn't ready to go back into school yet. You know, I just didn't have the discipline. I needed a break from it. So I only went for a few months, and then I stopped and I just kept gigging. And after a couple of years, I decided that I needed to make a move. You know, I grew up in Akron, Ohio.
Yep.
And I thought, man, if I'm going to actually do this, I got to go where the business is. So I moved to LA, and then everything took off from there.
Yeah, you know, Los Angeles, California. Yeah, well, that's where the action is, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the gigs and so forth, man. Do you remember when you bought your first vinyl?
Oh,
man,
when
it was?
I don't know. I was a little kid. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But I do remember, you know, I've always been a fan of horns. I love horns. And I remember my mom and dad had Herb Alpert records. They had all the Herb Alpert stuff, and they had Boots Randolph and all that kind of stuff. So for some reason, I got into horns when I was really young. And then, you know, in high school, I started discovering Maynard Ferguson and all the big bands, Buddy Rich and Woody Herman and Stan Kenton and all that stuff. And I think that's a big part of where my desire to become an arranger stemmed from. Yeah.
And so your path was oriented more to the jazz than rock, if you will, at an early age, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful, man. Yeah. And then, so you finished high school, you know, you began making some money, you felt, well, college, maybe I would postpone it. And then at the time, right, you decided, well, kind of music is going to be my way to make a living, and I like what I do, and you became better and so forth. And so you arrived in Los Angeles. Was difficult to get gigs at the time, or difficult to join bands, or?
It was only difficult because I didn't know anybody.
Right, there. You didn't know anybody. You moved from Ohio, right? So
yeah, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any money when I got there, you know. So I found a place to park, and I slept in my car.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I literally didn't know anything. I was starting from ground zero, right? And so I would get up every day and take a bunch of quarters. You know, there was only payphones at the time. So I'd go down to the union and figure out every phone number I could think to call, and calling agents and calling musicians and calling whoever I could call. And finally, I got a gig playing piano on a cruise ship. And so I went on the ship and I stayed on there for a year playing solo piano. And during the course of that year, I met a whole bunch of musicians who were coming through the ship playing in the show bands, right? So by the end of that year, I knew a bunch of guys, got off the ship, started calling those guys, and they said, hey, do you have a gig? I need a gig.
Yeah.
Well, they hired me for some gigs. I did those gigs, met other guys on those gigs. They called me for gigs, and then the net kind of blew up at that point, right?
Yeah. Do you remember what was the first band that you played with after the cruise ship?
Yeah, I do. It was a guy named Casey Romer. He had a gig at a little restaurant in Manhattan Beach, just playing pop tunes. Yeah. And a couple of the guys from the cruise ship were in his band. And they called me and said, hey, man, we could use a piano player. Come on down. Yeah. So that's how that happened.
And that lasted for how long?
Oh, I don't know, several months probably. Yeah.
So then you began making a little bit of money. You didn't have to sleep in the car. You rent an apartment.
Yeah, I got an apartment. That's right.
And I got an apartment, and then you began making some money. That's pretty good, man. What about the first kind of concert that you were a member of, a touring company?
It was actually Jean-Luc.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, I was in my early 20s.
Yeah. How that came together? How you met Jean-Luc Ponty, man?
It's actually a good story, and I was thrilled because when I was in high school, I was a big Jean-Luc fan, right? And I had a roommate at the time who was a drummer, and he had bought one of the big reel-to-reel tape players. So we took the tape and we put all of Jean-Luc's albums on one tape back to back. So we would come home every day after work and we'd put this tape on and crank it up and just listen to all of Jean-Luc's stuff. I mean, we did this day after day, week after week, month after month. So I knew all these tunes, right? And I was a huge fan of Jean-Luc. Yeah. And when I moved to LA, one of the things that I really wanted to do was play in Jean-Luc's band, right? So I got a call one day from Jean-Luc's management. I'd been in town a couple of years by this time, asking me to come down and audition, and went down and auditioned and got the gig, and rest is history, I guess they say. Huh?
So when you began, audition, you already knew the stuff because you've been listening in your back of your head for years and years. So
yeah.
The guy say, well, this guy knows my music, man.
Yeah, and I loved it too. It wasn't a gig to me. It was the place I always wanted to be,
Yeah. Wow. What a story, man. So then you did well on the audition and you began at the time, right? Jean-Luc Ponty moved from France to California. And then, he has stayed there, I think like 20 something years, he told me. I interviewed Jean-Luc like a month ago as well.
Oh, okay.
And he's a very nice guy too, man. So
yes, he is.
Yeah, he's very, very decent guy, a very cool guy. I talked to him like an hour and a half or so, and then so the guy. What do you remember? What year was that? And what?
I think it was either 86 or 87. I don't recall exactly.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. So by the time he had put like 6 or 7 albums, right? When he got the deal, the Atlantic year, I think he put an album like a year after a year after a year. So at the time he did have like 6.
Yeah, I think by that, when I joined the band, he had just signed with Columbia because he did that record called Fables.
Yeah.
He recorded that record and we were touring on that record and I joined the band after he recorded that album.
Yeah.
So I didn't play on the album, but that's the tour that I did.
Yeah. How many gigs were you guys doing at the time?
Well, we were doing a lot because he was going all over the world in those days, playing giant places in South America and playing in Europe and playing all over the States, Canada. And it was great. It was great. I mean, he was a rock star,
Of course. Yeah. Were you married at the time or you were single?
No, I was single.
So it was a lot easier for you to,
much easier. Yeah.
travel, pick your stuff, and then leave the apartment, whatever. You know, when you're married, have kids, it's very difficult to do it. You know, disappearing for 4 months. I was born in I never told you I was born in Santiago, Chile.
Oh, okay.
So I know you guys. You know, Jean-Luc Ponty and the band. They're very popular in Latin America.
I remember playing
in Chile too, man. You know, even Jamie said at one point he wanted to get an apartment there. And Jean-Luc Ponty, at some point his life, he decided to, I don't know, he wanted to, you know, get like a house in the north side, in the north part of Chile, and so of course never happened that, but he liked it there. And yeah, Jean-Luc Ponty is very, very popular there, man. Is any at the time? Is any areas or any venues that you like better than the other? I mean, you prefer to tour in Asia or on United States or?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, we did, you know, we played some like soccer arenas and hockey stadiums and stuff like that, big venues.
Those are big venues, man.
Yeah, oh yeah, big venues. And sometimes the equipment wasn't really up to snuff. I remember we were doing I think it was a hockey place or something in Portugal. And every time they turned on the PA, the lights went out. And then they would turn on the lights and the PA would go off. And it was, you know, that kind of a deal. So it was a lot of fun to be there, but it wasn't always the easiest thing to do. You know, some of the power, I remember we were carrying the synclavier at that time, and the synclavier didn't like when the power wasn't consistent. That was a bit of an issue, but we made it through, you know. Yeah. Had a great time. Ate a lot of great food, drank a lot of great wine, saw some beautiful places, met a lot of wonderful people.
Yeah.
Great year.
Yeah. I think Keith told me that you were the foodie of the group.
Yeah. Thanks to Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc kind of turned me on to good food and wine, actually.
Really? Is that right? No, I'm a beer type of guy, man. I don't know. Although I'm you know, I was born in Chile, so Chile is well known for wine, but I never at the time when I was living in South America, I didn't drink that much. And then when I came here to the United States to study, I began hanging out with all the American kids, and all of them were drinking beer. So I began drinking beer. I never touched the wine or whiskey or that kind of stuff, but that was good. So you stayed with Jean-Luc at that era for how many years? Were you 86 too?
Well, we were doing it all the time from 86 or 87 till about, I would say 92 or 93, when the work slowed down a little bit. And in 93, I got a call to play with Tom Jones, and I took that gig, and that gig was very, very busy. We worked all the time. We were doing like 230, 240 shows a year, something like that. So we were just gone.
Every night.
Yeah, we were gone, really, really gone a lot. And even prior to that, I had done a couple stints with Manilow and done a few other smaller things, you know. And then once I was with Tom, I didn't really do much else for the 6 years that I was in his band, because we were just working all the time, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah. So you feel at the time, well, it was any inside your head, the idea of you to leaving, you know, either Jean-Luc or Tom Jones or all the, you know, Anderson, Ponty, all the people that have played, to form your own thing, or you were happy playing for, you know, somebody else that can guarantee you, you know, 200 gigs a year and the money was good, as opposed to go on your own, nobody knows you that much, and it will be difficult to earn a living?
Yeah, it's very difficult trying to start your own thing up.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult, especially nowadays, you know, because the radio isn't what it was, and the you know, record labels aren't what they were. The whole scene has changed so much, you know, but everybody that I played with, I really liked. You know, I got to play with a lot of great people, played a lot of different kinds of music, but it was always at a high level of quality. So I was real happy doing that.
It's difficult to go from Jean-Luc Ponty to Tom Jones and then for somebody else. I mean, you guys rehearse a lot. You need to learn the music. In the case of Jean-Luc, you knew his stuff coming in to begin with, but when Tom Jones and the other guys, how long does it take for a good musician like yourself to? Huh?
It doesn't take long. I think for Tom, we played 3 or 4 days in a rehearsal studio and then went out on the road. Some gigs you don't even rehearse at all. You learn the tunes and you show up at the first gig and run through it at sound check and go.
Wow.
The one that I rehearsed with the most was Manilow, but it wasn't because the musicians needed the rehearsal. It was because it was so theatrical and there was so much, staging and lighting and all this stuff. They had to work through all that. So we spent a lot of time in rehearsal for that show.
Any funny story that you can tell me from the 86 to 92 with Jean-Luc? They gotta be, how many gigs you guys did? At least 6 years, I don't know, 1,000 or so, right? Yeah, or so 200 a year or 150 a year.
Yeah, I don't know. We did a lot of gigs. I'm sure there were some great stories. Nothing comes right to the top of my mind, but
or any particular gig that things went wrong and the equipment didn't arrive on time or whatever.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the most horrifying things that ever happened to me was one of my very first gigs with Jean-Luc, and it was at the Greek Theater in LA, right?
Yeah. That's a very famous play where that Neil Diamond play, right?
Place, right, and it's packed, sold out, a million people there. And here I am on stage. It's probably like my second or third gig with Jean-Luc, and I'm using the synclavier, which I didn't know how to use at the time. It was his instrument, right? And so here I am, I'm sitting behind this thing. It looks like the cockpit of a 747 or something. It's got a million buttons. I only know what 2 or 3 of them do. It was like turn it on and turn it off and whatever it was. So we get to the end of this big piece and it's the grand finale and, ta-da, and we're holding the note and Jean-Luc turns around and he takes his bow and he cuts the band off and I took my hands off the keyboard and the sound just went, it just stayed on, right? And I had no idea how to turn it off. The lights are blinking and I'm pushing all these buttons, nothing's happening. So Jean-Luc turns around and he walks up to the back of the keyboard and he pulls the wires out of it and it stops. And then the audience went crazy,
My God, man.
Yeah, true story.
Oh, wow. Wait, were you nervous? Of course.
Yeah, I was so embarrassed because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But, it was cool. I think everybody got a good laugh out of it.
Yeah, it happened, man. What any funny story with Tom Jones days as well?
Not particularly. I mean, there was always craziness. There's always craziness on all these gigs because you're out on the road and you're on a bus and you're in a hotel and you're in an airport and you're on a plane and, it's always craziness.
But is it difficult for a musician? You do a gig, you go to the hotel 11, 12, it's hard to fall asleep. Eventually you go to sleep and then you need to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 to either catch a bus or catch a flight. And day after day after day, you don't get to, you travel, you go to a lot of places in the world, but you don't get to know any of them. It's difficult, right?
That is very difficult. You're right. That's one of the things that always kind of bummed me out. I'd be in all these amazing places in Europe or South America, Russia, wherever, and you didn't have that much time to see anything. I remember we did a European tour back, it would have probably been late 80s, early 90s. And I remember we did 28 shows in 30 days, I think it was. Wow. And no 2 shows back to back were in the same country. Yeah. So every day it was getting up, getting on a plane, going to a different country. So you have the whole passport thing. You have the whole currency change, converting lira into francs or whatever it was. And then you're speaking a new language and you're going to a new hotel and you're only there for 5 minutes because you got to turn around and go to sound check and go do the gig, right? And I only had 2 days off that whole month. And I remember one of them was in Stuttgart, which was cool because I got to go to the Porsche Museum and see that. I'm a kind of a car guy, so.
Are you?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it takes a lot of energy. You got to take care of yourself when you're out there doing it.
Yeah, because you start, not sleeping well, eating junk food, drinking a lot, over time, man, that destroys your body, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I like music like you do, but I'm here at home,
Yeah.
I don't have to go. I don't have to. What can you elaborate on your participation with Pink?
Oh, Pink, we did some TV shows when she first came out. She had to do, I think it was Jay Leno and those kind of shows at the time for promo. And so I just got a call to play in that band, and I went and did it. I had fun. She was real nice.
Yeah.
Real nice girl, yeah.
What about Arturo Sandoval? You like that kind of stuff, man?
I love Arturo, yeah. I love that music, and obviously I love him. He's a brilliant musician. I was in LA working with Gary Grant a lot. I was writing a bunch of songs for Gary Grant's record. Gary had produced a couple records for Arturo, and Arturo put a LA big band together. And so he called me up to play piano in the big band, and I also did some arranging for that band too.
So you have all this here. You pretty much, you didn't have to, at the beginning when nobody knows you, you need to kind of audition for a particular band, but then that person like you, and then you begin doing a reputation, increase reputation, right? So it become a lot easier, right?
I lost the sound for a minute. Can you say that again?
I don't know. I'm saying that at the beginning, when you are starting, right? When you moved to Los Angeles, you needed to audition for Jean-Luc, but then you did well, and then the next band came, the next band. So at the beginning, it's hard because nobody knows you, but eventually you begin building a reputation, and then you don't have to audition for kind of new musicians. Yeah. Kind of the people start calling you, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, because by the time you've been in it for a while, you know everybody.
Yeah.
And the guy that calls you is a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Right.
So he knows or tour managers or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's nice when you get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. What about when do you begin the Anderson Ponty band? How was that experience?
It was great. It was a lot of fun. I was a Yes fan when I was a kid, obviously,
Yeah.
I loved Yes, and I loved Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was actually on vacation with my wife. We were up in wine country in Northern California. And I woke up one morning and there was an email from Jean-Luc. And he said, hey, I've been talking to Jon Anderson about putting a band together. Would you be interested in playing in it? Give me a call. So I called him up and talked about it a little bit. And I said, yeah, this would be really fun. So he gave me John's number, and it turned out that John lives up in that area. So when we left our vacation, we were driving home, we stopped at John's house. I met him and we had a chat, and just went from there. Yeah. Joined the band.
I'm surprised that for the Anderson Ponty band, all the members came from Jean-Luc Ponty's side, as opposed to, some people from the Jon Anderson's, band. So it was Jean-Luc Ponty with Jon Anderson pretty much. It wasn't like a mixture of the two of them musicians, right? So it was difficult to learn the music.
No. If you can play Jean-Luc's music, you can play pretty much anything.
Man, Jean-Luc Ponty's stuff. As a listener, right? I like the stuff, but as a musician, where you need to play the stuff, I imagine that the stuff is not that easy, man. For a new person coming,
So some of it's easy. Some of it, when he got the synclavier and started writing on the synclavier, it was particularly challenging for keyboards because he would sit there and he would figure out things that he wanted to hear, and he could program the synclavier to play it, right? And the synclavier is a computer, so it can play whatever you push, it'll do that. But then when he prints out the sheet music and gives it to me, I'm not a computer. I have to figure out how can a human being do this, right? And there were some of the pieces, man, I pulled my hair out trying to figure out how I could do it. You're crossing your hands and you're doing all this wacky stuff. But eventually I figured out a way to make it work, and off we went.
What about playing with Eddie? I think you played with Eddie Manilow, right? Yeah.
I did, just for about a week.
Really?
Yeah, Eddie was a character, man. And he, I don't know what happened, but at some point he got all mad at his band and he fired his whole band. And then he called his accountant, who was a guitar player, and I guess had played with him some. And he said, "Hey, I need a new band. Put a band together for me." So he called a bunch of guys that he knew, two of which were friends of mine, and they recommended me to get in that band. So we went and we learned all the tunes, and we rehearsed once or twice. We went and did about 5 or 6 shows with Eddie. Then his band called him up and they said, "Hey, we want our gig back." So Eddie goes, "Okay." And that was the end of it.
That's crazy, man.
Totally crazy, but that's the music business, you know.
Is it kind of, well, I don't know, normal? I don't know if normal is the right way, but it's not unheard of, right? So shit like that happens. Huh?
That's pretty rare. I mean, I haven't seen anything else quite like that, you know, which was good. I mean, you know, there's always wackiness, but it was wackiness that you can deal with, you know. So
what about it in the middle of a tour, or you know, the drummer, I don't know, got a flu or got sick or food poison or whatever? How easy is to get another musician in a day or two to replace that person?
Well, depends, you know. If it's Tom Jones or Barry Manilow, it's not that hard because the music, you can come in and read it. But even that presents a little bit of a challenge, though, because we don't really have music. You know, we might have had some music at the rehearsal, but once you play it a few times, you throw the music away and you're just playing, right? So if somebody had to come in, somebody would have to actually sit down and come up with the music, write it out for them so they could read it. So that would be the challenge there. But if you're doing a gig like, you know, Anderson, Ponty or Jean-Luc or something like that, that could be really tough.
Yeah.
Be really tough, almost impossible. You know?
That's not that easy for even a good musician coming out the street that knows how to read music. You know, play the gig or play a couple of days. It's not straightforward.
Because not only is it tough music, but plus the music has evolved since the tour started, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's not what's on the paper anymore. It's grown into this other thing. So you have to learn what's on the paper, but you also have to listen to the show tapes and figure out what the band is actually doing now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's evolved so much.
From the beginning of the tour until tonight, right?
Yeah, it keeps changing every night a little bit, you know.
You guys do pretty much during the tour the songs in the same order, or sometimes you change it?
Pretty much the same order. Yeah. Sometimes somebody will say, "I want to do this tonight, stick it in here," or whatever. But generally, the set list is pretty much the set list.
Yeah, I got you. And then, so from 86 to 92, you were with Jean-Luc. When you came back to Jean-Luc Ponty band after that?
When did I?
Yeah, when you came back to play, when Jean-Luc called you back again to join the band?
It was after the Anderson Ponty thing.
Okay, so that was the 218, right? 218. You guys didn't play at all with Jean-Luc between 92 and then 218?
No. When I left and did Tom Jones, Jean-Luc put together another band. He had a band of a bunch of African musicians for a while. Yeah. And then he had another keyboard player, I think from France, that he was using for several years. And so, you know, he was doing that and I was doing everything I was doing. And we didn't reconnect again until the Anderson Ponty band. And then after that, when he decided to tour,
that Atlantic year, yeah.
Yeah, he just called me again for that. So I was really thankful for that.
Yeah, and then I heard that when I talked to him a month ago, he after that was 218, kind of July, August, September, and then he wanted to do another run early 2020, and then with the COVID, of course, it didn't work out, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And then Jean-Luc mentioned that he's not retired. I mean, he's semi-retired, right? So, you know, he have done well financially. So, you know, he doesn't need the money just to play music, which for a musician, that's a beautiful thing, man.
Right, and he still loves to play too. We had a lot of fun these last couple of tours we did.
Yeah, man. I hope. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, even if he thinks he's retired, once this COVID thing is passed, we're going to pull him out of his chair and get him to go again, you know?
I hope so, man. Yeah, I love that. I love that the gig, and I'm surprised that it wasn't recorded at all. An album, a live album, or a CD or whatever. It wasn't recorded. I have no idea. Maybe he didn't want to do it, or maybe, Jean-Luc Ponty standards are very, very high. So for him to release something, it need to be like the top, right? A decent gig, a good gig is not good enough. It need to be over the top, right? So
that's correct. Yep.
And so that's what was never released, man. That was the night that I saw you guys at the Ram's Head, and the day after that at the Birchmere. That's where the picture that I sent you, and it was you guys play very, very good. I really like this stuff.
Thank you. That Ram's Head was a fun gig. I love little gigs like that,
Yeah. Plus, it's a smaller place. People have dinner, drink some beer. It's a more cozy place, as opposed to playing in a big venue. You interact with the people and so on and so forth. And then and going kind of back and forth, you were hard, and you earned a Grammy nomination, right? For the night in Tunisia. How was that experience, man?
That was great. That was great. I didn't even know that the arrangement had been nominated, right? So I was in a rehearsal. I was producing a Christmas concert at my church, and I'd been at a rehearsal all day Saturday, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I finally got done with the rehearsal, and before I went home, I sat down in a chair in the back of the room and pulled out my phone and just started checking my messages, right? And there was a message on there from Arturo, and it said, "Hey, man, I just called to say congratulations, man. You got the Night in Tunisia got nominated for a Grammy, man." And I looked at it, and then I rewound it, and I listened to it again, because I didn't even know. I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I found out about that. That was just a great experience.
Unbelievable, man. And whether you win or not, they send you like a certificate or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get all this stuff, and just getting to go is fun too,
Yeah, that's good for you, man. Feel free to elaborate now with your new band, with I think it's called the Red Coats, right? Yeah, feel free to elaborate that. And actually, there's a lot of very good musicians there, man.
Oh yeah.
I was on your website. I was looking at the people. Obviously, I didn't recognize it, but where they have played, and they have played for, they were big names, man.
Oh yeah.
How that came together?
It's kind of Matt's idea. Matt, the bass player, Bissonette.
Yeah.
He's an amazing songwriter, producer guy, great singer, great bass player, obviously. And he had a bunch of tunes, and he wanted to put a band together. So he called all of us, and he said, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" And we said, "Yeah, sure." And that was right around the time the COVID hit. So we all did it in our home studios. We never played in the same room, never saw each other. Still haven't seen each other, just over the Zoom calls or whatever. And then sent all the tracks to him, and he got them mixed. And you heard any of it?
No, I don't know if you guys have released a CD at all, or it's in YouTube. No,
I know he made some CDs. I have a couple, but I think it's on the streaming services, Spotify.
Gotta be, yeah, and YouTube, there gotta be some stuff I can listen to, yeah.
Yeah, probably. You should listen to it. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
It's great playing, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah. So the idea was for guys to release a CD and then tour after, But of course, with the COVID, didn't work out, right? So
I imagine we'll do some gigs at some point, but who knows when,
Yeah. Yeah, I need to check it out, the band. I don't know them. I know that going over your website, you mentioned that, but I haven't had the chance to go to YouTube and then listen to it. But you're doing nowadays a lot of stuff. You have your audio production as well, and you have produced a bunch of CDs, soundtrack, and other projects, right? So
yeah, I do a lot of that. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of arranging.
Yeah.
A lot. for everything from like high school marching bands to orchestral stuff to big band, you know, whatever anybody needs.
But you do it for somebody to use it, or is the other way around? People have material, they call you, and they you put it together. You're at home. You have like a studio at home where you
Yeah.
record a studio. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always different. Every project is unique. You know, most of the stuff is commissions. You know, somebody calls me and they say, I need this, so I do that.
Yeah. What about which soundtrack have you done? And there TV stuff or
I did
a movie?
Yeah, I did one called The Cheeseheads a long time ago. I think it was a cable TV thing. I'm not even sure what it was, but I've done that. And then I've done a lot of guest spots on movie soundtracks and a lot of ghostwriting on TV and film soundtracks.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff, you know?
Yeah. And then when they use it, I mean, if that kind of stuff belongs to you, you get like a check every so often with.
Yeah. Every year you get special payments.
Payment, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're selling stuff on in Bandcamp as well, right? Are you or not?
I haven't done it. I haven't used Bandcamp. No. Most of the stuff that I do, it's for clients.
I got you. Right.
I'm getting paid directly by the clients.
Yeah, because talking to a lot of musicians, the Bandcamp, you know, pay much better than, you know, Spotify and all the other apps, right? So Spotify is very, very, you don't make any money at all. Unless,
I hate Spotify.
Unless you have millions of hits, right? Or, you know, people listen to stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. As opposed to Bandcamp, I think they take 10% and the rest, you know, come to you. So it's a very, Spotify is, I don't know, the musicians they don't get anything, man. I think very unfair. So many people take a cut before it goes, you know, it goes back to the musicians. You know, it's not. What kind of music do you like to listen to, man?
I like to listen to everything. You know what, Claudio? I've got to split. I've got to go pick up my son from school.
Oh yeah. Once you told me, right? Okay.
Yeah. So is it okay if we continue this another time?
Yeah, we can do a follow up with that. Oh, I forgot that you told me once. Yeah. It was very nice talking to you, and then we can arrange a second meeting, and we can do a part 2, man.
All right, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Wally, man. I would put the meeting together with Rayford, Jamie, and Keith, and then that would be fun, man.
Let's do it.
The weekend, man. Okay, take it easy, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day, Claudio.
No problem, man. Take it easy, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.